channel the goodness. Okay.
Perfect.
Let's do it. Welcome back to the Elliot Reeves Show. I am Elliot Reeves, and I'm joined today by two of Edinburgh's finest. We have to my immediate left, Andrew Johnson and Gary Young. Rather than introduce Andrew and Gary, for the sake of intrigue as to how they introduce themselves, I'm going to ask them to give a quick bio, and then we'll get into the conversation. So chaps, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's delightful to be here.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's great to have you both. So we'll start with you, Andrew. I mean, if you can give us a quick overview as to who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a slightly creaky and croaky person today. I am a therapist. I've been a therapist for 25 years in health and well-being, primarily meditation, clinical hypnosis, EFT, and I work with individuals, mostly one-to-one here in Scotland, and groups doing corporate stress management and resilience and coping skills training. And the majority of my business at the moment is online with recordings, MP3s and apps. So that keeps me busy.
And you've got a lot of apps.
Yes. My business partner, Mike, who's in Seattle, and I have 24 apps in the App Store at the moment, and we are enjoying the journey.
Great stuff. Gary, how are you doing over there?
I'm good. I'm good. I, as an intro, I'm a mindfulness and well-being coach and facilitator, I guess is my new title. Which is very different from where I was before. But so I'm the founder and of a business, a social enterprise called the Mindful Enterprise, and our specialisms, I guess, are delivering. We deliver well-being and resilience training to the business sector. To help businesses to realise their potential, for individuals and businesses to realise their potential. There's a lot of stress prevalent in the workplace at the moment, and a number of other issues that we feel this training is particularly beneficial for. So we're working with businesses, and we're also, our kind of key social missions really are to try and strengthen young people and those and families and in disadvantaged communities, because we believe there's some gaps there in terms of knowledge and insight and training that could really help to strengthen the people of these different communities. I think we've seen statistically a worrying rise in mental health related issues, particularly amongst children. It seems to be getting younger and younger, the different mental health related issues that are now becoming prevalent amongst young people. We want to do something to help that. So our social mission is really embedded strongly within a mission to try and see mindfulness and other forms of meditation integrated into the curriculum in Scottish schools. And we also want to lift up communities through some of this training as well, so that people can help to pull themselves out of some of the difficulties that they face in generational cycles of poverty and suffering. We want to try and, over time, have a bit of a footprint in those communities as well, a meaningful impact. And the work we do with businesses is helping to pay for that, because we do free work. We've done some free work in schools and communities, and some subsidised work in schools, and the work we do with corporates is helping to fund that. So that is the model of the business, and this is my new life from where I was before. But in addition to that, we do courses for individuals who are interested in coming along and training in mindfulness. We do that at the moment just in Edinburgh. We'd hope to be branching out over time, and do some one-to-ones as well with people who maybe prefer that approach rather than the group setting.
Fantastic. Good intro. as you kind of alluded to, I mean, you haven't always been involved in this. Maybe take us on a bit of a journey as to where you were before and what kind of led you down this path.
Yeah, so I'll try and keep this as brief and succinct as possible.
We've got plenty of time, don't worry.
Well, I spent 23 years in the corporate world working in a number of different roles through operational environments within financial services, and then moved into change management. So I became a project manager and sort of worked my way up and got my experience in as a project manager, and then decided to go solo, and I started my own limited company and was contracting myself back to a number of the sort of well-known banks predominantly. So I was in the change management environment for about 12 years, learned a lot, but over that period of time I had started to also become aware of stress and how it was impacting me, and the hours I was working on some of the projects and programs I was working on was quite intense. It was taking up a lot of energy, and I had started to move more into doing more self-development stuff. So I started to experiment with various modalities and meet lots of wonderful people who were sharing this stuff. One person in particular who had a clinic in Edinburgh was doing Reiki sessions with her, and she sort of recommended that I maybe look into meditation. And from there, I couldn't quite believe the impact it had on me quite so soon after I started to tap into that. And from there, I experienced lots of other different things. Then I found mindfulness, and I trained in mindfulness, and I did my 8-week course. And it was probably about halfway into that the light bulbs just started to come on quite significantly about how important this was going to be for me as a practice and for others. And that journey took me onto a path where I've now gone through the Mindfulness Association teacher training pathway, and still got more stuff that I'm keen to do in that as part of that journey. But I've just connected and resonated so much with mindfulness that I felt that this was something that needed to be more accessible and shared with more people, and that took me on the journey into this new world that I'm in now. But it's had significant impacts on my life, transformational stuff, I would say, in terms of having this regular practice and the opportunities that have come from it, and all the different benefits that have just flown from it on a kind of just an evolving basis. So that's a brief bit about my journey. But I think the main reason I got to where I got to, and I didn't really join the dots initially, but then I started to join the dots because I was using meditation, mindfulness, and other aspects for healing, where I was going back and looking at my past, into my childhood, and certain things that occurred then that had almost been preparing me for doing what I'm doing now, where there was quite a severe mental health issue which my dad had when I was quite young. I was only 7, I think, roughly, and it had quite a big impact. I didn't really realise for majority of my life how much an impact it was having until I was able to see more clearly in some of my behaviours and how I was dealing with emotions and various different things that it actually had. It was quite deep rooted. So these modalities have helped me to go back to that point and relive those times, bring it all back, and properly heal from it. It was essential to helping me to move forward, and without that experience, I wouldn't be where I am now. So, but grateful to have had the experience in the first place, although it was painful for my dad and all the family and all the stuff that occurred in the months and years that followed that. But it was, looking back, it was a gift in some ways. Yeah. So it's been very, very helpful.
Yeah, I think that's quite common. Sometimes the biggest gifts that you have come through difficult times or adversity.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Reiki, because it seems as though that's quite a common gateway into the spiritual realm, if you like.
Yeah.
Andrew, with yourself, I mean, what's your earliest memory of getting into these kinds of practices, and how did your journey evolve?
My earliest, my earliest memory of this strange world that we're all in is doing some karate training when I was at school in the 70s, and my God, there was a huge interest in the martial arts because of Bruce Lee and all that. But I went along as a teenager to a karate class and enjoyed it to a degree. But the last 5 or 10 minutes was meditation, to sort of try and ground us and centre us. And as my friends and colleagues and schoolmates were all sitting giggling, I was thinking, there's something to this. And that set up a sort of lifelong love of what I call eyes closed techniques. And I sort of dabbled in meditation for many years, and had a variety of different career paths, some more successful than others. I worked for an airline, and I was in the book trade for many years, and I had a couple of self-employed businesses, but there was never a deep love. I wasn't following my bliss. And about, the early 90s, I started taking an interest in hypnotherapy. Met a hypnotherapist, had a couple of sessions, and thought, wow, this is something. And I did my training in 94 into 95, and quite quickly went into private practice, and I've been doing that ever since. So it's like a pre-hypnotherapy is like a past life to me. I suppose it is the same to you. It's like a dim and distant past.
Yeah.
It was such a transformation for me, and it was lovely, excuse me, at that stage to sort of feel, right, this is me now. Where do I go from here? And it's an ongoing journey for me. It's been wonderful, ups and downs, but it's the same in everyone's life.
Absolutely. It's
Brilliant.
it's that familiar, trying to get more familiar with self, isn't it? It's about learning more about ourselves, the inner world, rather than the external world and the identities that we create for ourselves through our environment, circumstances. I can relate to that.
I think it's for many people in this industry, whether you call it healing or wellness or well-being or whatever, if they go through their training and it has a transformational effect on them, as it did with you and as it did for me, it's you can't help but be so positive about it.
Yeah.
It becomes like a mission to go out and just act that way and be that way and introduce it to other people. What about you, Elliot? Because you have a deep love of this.
Yeah, I do. I've just been thinking about that, actually. I started thinking earlier on today about what was the earliest thing that I can remember in terms of, sort of spirituality. And I don't know that I could necessarily pinpoint one thing. I know that if I had said to my younger self, you'll be interested in this kind of stuff, I'd have told you where to go. Because at the time, it just seemed so new agey, woo-woo, just something that, myself, I've gained a deeper understanding of myself. Historically, I was very left-brained, very linear thinking, logic, and the right hemisphere of my brain, laterally has kind of come to life a lot more.
Can relate to that, yeah.
Yeah. So, probably it would be getting into things, podcasts mainly, Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, London Real. And then I think probably the tipping point was an episode of London Real with a chap called Peter Sage, who called himself the Enlightened Entrepreneur. And he spoke a lot about consciousness. He used how would you describe it? As a framework, really. And I've heard Michael Bernard Beckwith talk about it, which is like 4 levels of consciousness. So there's the to me mentality, which is like victim mode. Yep. So everything's happening to me, poor me, just a
complaining and moaning. And
just not a great mindset, I suppose, to be in. And then you have by me, Now, by me is kind of personal development mode. So if you're looking to sort of set goals and break through walls and, I'm going to make millions of pounds and all this sort of stuff, it's good. It's better than being in a to me place, but it's still not optimal because it means that there's a lot of resistance and you're kind of fighting against the swimming upstream is probably an analogy that I would use for that. Then there's the through me, which is just allowing things to unfold, kind of going with the bends in the river wherever they might take you, which is really probably the best place to be at. And then there's as me, which is, I don't know how best to kind of describe that in English terms, but like you would see yourself in a tree, it's like the peak state of meditation, if you like.
Completely connected to
absolutely
everything and all things.
Absolutely. Yes. But probably not ideal for daily living. So
not really.
So through me is, Peter speaks a lot about living in through me and just taking swinging the bat at life and seeing where it takes you.
Yeah.
That for me probably was the earliest, but that then led into deeper spiritual exploration with people like Eckhart Tolle, Ken Wilber, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, all this just amazing stuff that these people were talking about. And then it became really dabbling in meditation, mindfulness, and then more recently playing around with things like sensory deprivation flotation tank, or
that was a good day.
Yeah, well, the Wim Hof method, the ice bath,
Yeah.
You're a brave man.
Yes, that has been, that was quite an experience. I've done the ice bath twice with the Wim Hof breathing, and I've yet to find anything that brings you more into the state of presence than that, because it's such an extreme environment. You have no opportunity to focus on anything other than the sheer discomfort that you're in at that exact moment.
Yep.
Which has been amazing as well. So yeah, but as I say, if I had this conversation with my 18, 19, even like 25-year-old self, I think he'd have just been like, what are you on?
Yeah.
But, and I think a lot of people, the light bulbs are going on. People are becoming, social media is great in many ways because it allows the sharing of this sort of information, which, and the accessibility of it. But for people that maybe think this is very out there for them, what would you suggest as a sort of taster or getting into it? Where would you start with that?
Gary?
Nice deflection.
Well, I guess I can relate this to some of the work that I'm doing in businesses, and there's people in there who are really coming to these topics from many different places. Some people are ready for it. Some people are ready to engage in it and listen to it. There's other people who are skeptical. There's some people who are resistant to it, and I think the approach of finding some common ground there across everybody in terms of how it's delivered, if it's delivered in a way where it's relatable to the human condition and the things that we face on a day-to-day basis, the emotions that we all feel and all that kind of stuff, and how it can relate into business and into life. And talking about the scientific elements of it as well, which is now fairly, there's a lot of depth to the science behind it, a lot of these different practices and what it can do to physically change regions of our brain, for example. And I think people coming into this that get that insight, I think that's the thing that can really get people more warm to it, or to a place where they can start to understand whether it is something for them or not. And I think as an introduction, if I think about my kind of introduction to this, it was to obviously go and Reiki was the gateway, and then in my own time I started just going on to YouTube and putting in guided meditation as a into the search, and there was different things coming up, and there was guided meditation for clarity, for focus, for anxiety, for connecting to higher self, to all the different stuff that you can see in there. And there's huge amounts, and I just started experimenting with different ones, the things that I maybe looked at and really just resonated with me. What's going on in my life right now, and which one of those really connects with where I am at just now. And if it's just about wanting to be a little bit more focused or concentrated, whatever it is, go and just click on that and just see how it feels, and see how you feel after it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm going to just do a quick plug, actually, and I'm not paid for saying this, but there's a great YouTube channel called Infinite Waters in brackets Diving Deep with a guy called Ralph Smart, and he does, you know, like 20-minute kind of conversations about opening your third eye and such stuff, which is he makes it very engaging but also kind of palatable for people that maybe still find it a wee bit out there. Taking it back maybe a little bit, I mean, I assume that people know about the types of things that I'm talking about, and often I'll be wrong. What is mindfulness?
Me? You want to?
Well, go on.
So mindfulness is, to simplify it, you know, it's the art of learning to live in the present moment with kind of full non-judgmental awareness of what's happening while it's happening, and that includes thoughts. We're awareness of thoughts and coming through as they're happening. We're aware of them, but not identifying with them all, not engaging in them all, because that then becomes thinking. And when we get into the thinking, that can sometimes take us down the spirals of negative or unhelpful tangents that can impact how we feel on a day-to-day basis. So that's it in a very simplistic way, but it's got so much depth to it, the practice. It's untrue, and it really just depends on how much somebody chooses to practice it. It's something, because you're kind of accessing this heightened sense of awareness of all things that are going on in your experience at that moment, including thoughts and feelings and emotions and sensations in the body. That can sometimes, depending on where people are at in their life, or maybe if they've had any real difficult situations happening, like some traumatic things, breakups, grief, loss, these kind of things, it can bring that stuff quite strongly into someone's awareness. So it's just to know that mindfulness is, when you come into it, just come into a place where maybe things are a little bit more stable. But also, having said that, I have been on courses where people have recently lost people very close to them, and it has significantly helped their journey in coping with that. Because the tools that you get during a course of mindfulness, for example, are really helpful for self-management and self-care. And it just allows us to manage life with a different perspective. We can disengage from some of the kind of thoughts and thinking that is going on that are leading to us starting to be overwhelmed emotionally, and there's lots of depth to it, but hopefully that's given a bit of a brief intro.
Yeah, really good. Really good. One of my good friends, Matt Brown, told me about Tim Ferriss analogy, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And he speaks about his thoughts like in terms of a washing machine. And if he's not meditating, then the thoughts are just, he's in the washing machine and the thoughts are just going round and round and round. Whereas if he's meditated or being mindful, then he's outside the washing machine looking in. And he's just the observer of the thoughts. Which I think is a beautiful way to put it. Andrew, how would you describe meditation, and how people could kind of access that, get into that?
Well, there are many forms of meditation, of course, but mindfulness being one, and perhaps the most popular at the moment. But really, meditation is just about reconnecting with the self. I guess it's all about returning to the moment. The simplest form of meditation is always the best, which is just connecting with your breathing. The difficulty comes in the fact that we are all so busy these days. We are bombarded with information, and therefore, for many of us, including me, we really have to retrain how we think. And that is simply about taking some time just to be in the moment and slowing things down and watching your thoughts as they pass and sort of, as you said, stepping back from them and realising that in actual fact this passage of thoughts that we have are mostly in the past or in the future and really very little about what's happening in the moment. And the one thing that's happening in the moment all the time is the breath. But most of us aren't aware of it. So the simplest form of meditation for me is sitting, closing the eyes, and then just noticing the flow of breathing and stepping back from the thoughts, becoming the observer of them. And then you notice that these thoughts are part of patterns and routines and habits, and you realise that they're not really you. And when you do that, you get a bit of control over how you react to the thoughts. The thoughts aren't necessarily the issue, it's how we react to them. If you think of it like a phobic reaction, so many of us in this life have phobias. Even little ones, spiders and snakes and public speaking, and I've dealt with hundreds if not thousands of them over the years in my private practice. But we think about having a phobic reaction and the thought itself changes the way we feel. But there's nothing there in real life. And that happens to all of us to one degree or the other as we go through our life, as we're reminded of things that have happened in the past. A smell, a bit of music, a certain taste, something that reminds us of something that happened in the past, triggers a memory, changes the way the energy flows and gives us a feeling that we don't want. It is incredibly quick, it's incredibly difficult to change on your own. But one of the things that helps is this mindful practice, this meditative practice of noticing it and realising that it's actually not you. And in many ways, that's what hypnotherapy does. It just does it in a quicker way than we could do ourselves.
But that can be very powerful in a positive sense as well, because of the ability to be able to tap into an emotion of, say, gratitude or something good based on a past experience. You're still able to access the emotion.
Yes.
But you're just shortening the process, I guess.
I mean, there's a technique that I teach called favourite place of relaxation, which is all about bringing back pictures, and if you see pictures, and sounds and smells and tastes and feelings of a place, real or imaginary, that you feel deeply relaxed. And the more that you can do that, and the more you can anchor those sensations, those images and feelings and whatever in your mind, the more it builds the mind-body connection, and the more that you can have the reverse of the phobic response, which is to take a deep breath, close your eyes, and return to that favourite place of relaxation in order to change how you feel. But that takes a little bit of practice. But as long as you're gentle with it and you allow it to be the journey, then you can, as you say, you can build that resilience in. And from a favourite place of relaxation, you can start to visit a place of healing, or a place of gratitude, or a place of love, or a place of confidence or positivity, and start to rebuild these positive connections between the mind and the body and the emotions. Yeah. It's hugely powerful. Most of us don't realise how quickly we can do that, given the right simple tools.
Definitely. I mean, your apps are an amazing way for people to tap into a lot of this good stuff. It's super accessible, really easy to just fire up. And I've done, in-person meditation with you as well. I just absolutely love it. Gary, I didn't know the term. I don't know if it's necessarily the technical term, but like a Bodyscan meditation. I found that to just be incredibly powerful. Starting at your toes, working up to your head, just relaxing and easing everything. Even that in and of itself is such an amazingly powerful tool. Yeah,
it's one of the kind of staple practices within a mindfulness curriculum, the body scan, and body awareness is something that's really, really important for everybody, really, because our body is so intelligent and is communicating with us in various ways every day. And if we don't listen to what the body's telling us, we can miss out on something important. And I think sometimes because we're so busy up in our heads with all our thoughts and to-do lists and on that treadmill of life, we don't sometimes stop to become connected with ourselves and listen to what the body's telling us. And sometimes the body's saying you need to slow down, you need to take a break, you need to give the brain a break because you've just been intensively active and thinking for many days on the trot, which is really tiring us out. It's really draining our energy. It's building up our stress. And so the various forms of meditation, I'm sure everybody would find one that really connects well with them. Bodyscan is one that that I like as well. And some people initially when they do a body scan, they either really connect with it, or it takes a little bit of time to feel their way into. Because if we aren't particularly connected or a little bit disengaged from our body, sometimes that process can, we just have to go through that process of becoming more familiar with that connection to the body, aware of sensations and how the body feels. And it can, we can see signs earlier as well that because of the mind, when the mind is going through maybe a lot of there's a lot of emotional stuff coming through there and a lot of negative and unhelpful stuff. If we get into those thinking patterns over and over and over, we're establishing quite deep connections within the brain that just bring these thoughts back to us on a daily basis, and they're triggering feelings and emotions that the body will eventually start to give us signals that we need to have a look at that. But a lot of people don't make that connection. They just think, why is my stomach not feeling great? Why is my back not feeling great? Why, my whole body's got this tension in it, or whatever it is. That's the body basically saying, have a look at what's going on in the mind. And when we do that, anytime I'm ill, and I'm not ill often, anytime that I am, I know why. I just, I realise maybe I've overwhelmed myself with work, and I'm really working very long hours trying to keep on top of it all. And I start to become aware of some of the thought patterns that are coming in as well. And then sometimes after that big period of activity, you get a little bit of a break from it. Your body just gives out and you get sick. And I always know why. The first thing I do when I feel not 100% is I think about how I've been thinking. What's been going on in the mind? That's step one. And if I've been in my highest, happiest, productive, and in my kind of flow state, or whatever you want to call it, where you're just not, you're not really engaging in negativity and unhelpful stuff, then typically you'll be fit and well.
I think it's a very common thing. I think most people watching this or listening later would find that there are so many times that we go through our working life and we switch off and go on holiday, and the second day of the holiday you get a cough or a cold, or you start to feel the results of the work that we've been doing too much of. Adrenaline keeps us going and going and going, and then the body relaxes and the adrenaline disappears and the immune system just goes, give me a break.
Yeah.
And it just, there are many people I've worked with in the past that have, every time they go on holiday, they become ill because they've simply not taken the time during their working week for self-care. And I think that's hugely important these days. Yeah. It's
almost become a luxury. People say, think of taking a break as a little luxury, if I can find the time for it, that's the kind of mentality. And that has got a short shelf life. We have to absolutely get our balance of all our achieving and doing, our kind of, managing difficulty, and then having this soothing side to make sure that we're looking after ourselves along that journey. Otherwise, we're going to get taken down at some point with something, and it might be at a time where it's least convenient. So it's essential that we that we add these things in to our day and change our thinking about it. I think a lot of people have got, and I include myself in that, I've got into sort of periods of just so heavily focusing on all the things that I needed to do and not prioritising at certain points the kind of soothing stuff, the becoming and dropping more into a sort of being mode from a doing mode, switching that off, giving the body, the brain and everything a chance to kind of recharge and refresh itself so you can go again. And I think a lot of people get sucked into that game. This life that we all live nowadays, modern day living, is 101 miles an hour, and everybody's trying to do things very quickly, trying to get to whatever it is, whatever place they're trying to get to very quickly, trying to make a certain amount of money very quickly, and that drives people into sometimes not particularly helpful patterns of living. So it's essential, and I think for me, just going back to your point about meditation and all the different variants of it. I mean, you've got a lot of people are doing yoga now. There's a meditative element to that, but movement meditation. And for me, it's about just all these different elements of meditation are just about becoming more familiar with whatever it is you're doing. If you're doing your mindfulness stuff, you're becoming more familiar with your experience of, sound, sensations, thoughts, feelings, the whole lot. Other types of meditation, you're visualizing, you're becoming more, familiar with the elements of that process. And so it's very, very informative. And for me, one of the most important things for self-development, in my experience anyway.
Awesome. One of the questions that I've asked people in interviews, in doing Inspired Edinburgh interviews, and it's a bit of an esoteric question, but it's, what is your worldview? And what I suppose I kind of mean by that is, if you can explain the way that you experience the world and, your mindset towards it. So would you say that you're kind of positive, optimistic? Would you say that you're realistic? Would you say that you're frustrated and pessimistic? Andrew, starting with yourself, I mean, how would you describe the way that you interpret this? There's just a quote that I would add, and it's that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. I think that's such a great quote. Sorry, I just wanted to get that in there. I don't know whether it was relevant or not. It just sounded good.
Yeah, it's a very good quote. Well, how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go, Elliot?
As deep as it goes. Let's go.
Let's go deep.
Yeah.
Well, I am a positive realist. I believe that it is the only thing we can do is change ourselves. I believe that the more that we change ourselves and move towards healing ourselves, the more we will heal those or help to heal, or no, that's wrong. Hold on. I think the more that we heal ourselves, the more that we show our true selves to others, the more they will allow themselves to heal, and in doing so, it ripples out fully throughout the world.
Spot on.
I think that we believe too much that we have no power, and we do. The power is over ourselves, and once we grasp that, and we realise that what we are seeing external to us is really, to put it in a simple term, much more of an illusion than we think, that we are much more in control of creating. We're on the sort of leading edge of creativity and experience, and we can't change what's happening in front of us. The only thing we can do is change our reaction to what's happening in front of us. And in doing so, we retain a sense of self. And so I am a big fan of Eckhart Tolle. I'm a huge fan. I think he's perhaps the most authentic messenger out there at the moment.
Amazing.
Yeah. I practice a lot of his meditations. I believe that if you take his entire recordings and all his books and distill them down, it's just about being in the moment. That's all it is, living in the now. I think most of us need to hear that message as he does. As he talks about it, I believe that most of us need to hear that in different ways, continually, repetitive, until it actually clicks. Some of us, like Eckhart Tolle, it comes from a place of deep, deep pain. And something snaps in the mind, and we realise who we are and where we are in the universe. For most of us, in this game that we're playing called life, all the shiny things are all the distractions are too powerful. And as we talked about earlier, sometimes it takes an event, something that happens in our life that shakes us, and we get broken down, and we go down to the core of our being, and then we come up stronger and more illuminated and more enlightened. So one of the transformational things that happened in my life was that as I started my career, the best bit of advice I got, and I've talked about this many times, was when one of my lecturers who said, you need to go and volunteer for a charity that you can help with stress management or resilience training or coping skills. And I worked for a couple of years with a cancer support centre and in Ayrshire, and I worked with one-to-ones and groups, and that really taught me a huge amount about what people are going through. And in the first couple of months, I kept hearing people say the gift of cancer, and I thought, this is mad. What a ridiculously horrific thing to say. How can cancer be a gift? How is this possible? But the more I talked to people about this, and the people who were using this phrase, they were saying that for many of them, that was the signal to reevaluate their life and get in touch with people that they'd lost touch with, to perhaps change careers and follow their bliss, to get in touch with perhaps their spiritual and emotional side and a lot and deeper. And in doing so, if they went into remission, as they looked back a couple of years later, as they looked back to what had happened, how their life had transformed, and they look back, and I know this is such a ridiculous thing to say, or it sounds a ridiculous thing to say, but an awful lot of people said, if I hadn't had that wake-up call, I wouldn't be the person I am now. Reconnected with myself, with my family, with my bliss, with my passion, with my power, with my spiritual side. And it took me a long time to understand that. So I think many people who are the messengers these days, the Eckhart Tolles, the late and great Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, and so many more, have had that dark night of the soul, something that's just triggered them into reevaluating everything. Not that I'm saying you need to find that. Far from it. You can do things to start the journey yourself, but no one wants to go into that state. But some great things come from it.
Awesome answer. Yeah. Great stuff in there.
I went off tangent a little bit there, but hey, there
Perfect.
we go.
Awesome. Gary, the question, I suppose, the worldview question, I mean, how would you describe your own?
My goodness. Just one thing I want to say on the back of what Andrew said there, I do support absolutely the things that he was saying, and I think regarding illness in general, we still have a lot of people that are looking for answers outside of themselves to heal from illness and to point fingers of where that illness has come from. And it is complex because we don't know really if there's been some genetic components, but one of the genetic components that we do inherit is how we think and how we feel. that is something that we can pick up through genetic expression, through the ancestry. So if there's been some difficulty in with our parents or grandparents or whatever it is, and then we come along and maybe some of those lessons and challenges haven't been fully learnt and overcome, then these things are passed on to the next generation to come along and maybe learn and overcome some of these similar types of lessons until somebody manages to break through and do the work and overcome, and then the next generation might not have that same challenge to face. That's my view of things anyway, and I've had a lot of clarity on that during my own experience. But just to go back to the question, I believe the world's an amazing place. I think there's so much to love and enjoy about it. So much so that I kind of feel quite a little bit not free, because you start to get, you create a business, you have to then put all the effort and all the sort of deep work into growing a business, and it consumes you, and you can forget for months on end that there's a big world out there that you've still got a desire to see and do things, and so you feel a little bit restricted and not free. And I think that to me is something that I kind of battle with sometimes, because sometimes I like to just pack my case and go, but I think for me there's light and dark in everything, isn't it? That's what life's about. There's light and dark inside of us. There's light and dark that we see in our external world as well. And I think with all the fantastic things that are going on, and we are very much we're going through an evolutionary cycle of change at the moment that's significant in its nature. There's so much change happening so quickly that people are being, I think, forced a little bit to really, I think, to heal and try and move on at the same, almost the same rate that the world is moving on. And I think people that stay in resistance to that flow are just going to encounter more suffering and more difficulty. Yeah. So, but I think. Yeah, sorry, were you going to ask a question there?
No, not really. No, I was just I was thinking about saying it's the whole outer world follows inner world.
Yeah, and I think the point that that Andrew was making about the importance of working on ourselves first, because from that place we are more prepared to support other people. And share stories and give people the courage to step forward and start to do the same. And there's loads of that stuff going on over social media just now, and I think it's great to do that, as long as everybody, people that are doing it, their motives are sound in terms of what they're doing. They're just authentically trying to share what's happened so that they can help others to do it. I think there's a very fine line where we can get into a little bit we can get a little bit self-centered through that process as well, and have a motive of trying to create lots of money and become wealthy from it and stuff like that. And I think hopefully if that again, there's everything and all things out there, and it's just about people trying to connect with the authentic message. And you mentioned Eckhart Tolle. I mean, amazing. I could listen to him all day, every day.
I fall asleep. That's the problem.
He's just the amount of time standing in the kitchen making my breakfast in the morning. Where just I've got one of his sessions on. I love it. When he drops his little funnies and giggles and laughs and stuff like that about the stupidity of the human race in terms of how we go about our lives and things. It's amusing, and I can relate to a lot of it as well, because I've probably done most of it. But I think for me, in terms of the world, I mean, I genuinely believe that our journey as humans is we go through all these different stages of growth and development, and it's important that we keep going with that throughout our lives. I think when we get to the point where we think this is it, this is me, I'm not changing now, I'm not going to, that's when the problems start to come, because the universe has another idea for you, and it will start to bring more challenging things to your attention asking you to step forward and grow
Yeah.
and overcome fears and all that kind of stuff. And if we resist that and we don't go with it, then the pressure builds.
Yeah.
And the suffering can heighten as well. So I think we have to keep finding the courage to step forward and evolving and growing with every challenge that we get, and see every difficult situation that comes into our lives as an opportunity to grow. I think if we see it as just this thing that's happening to me, you mentioned earlier about, you know, the to me sort of thing, you know, and that was me. You know, that used to be me. You know, I used to be, you know, moaning about this and that, and I think one of the things that really triggered me into this was that I went through a period of quite intense research and digging quite deep on some of the conspiracies and
I was going to bring this up, actually.
the deep state and all the things going on within government and all the corruption and you know, the things going on at the highest levels of all the control systems, you know, banking, pharmaceuticals, all that kind of stuff. And it woken me up. It was part. I think lots of people go on that journey to just awaken to what is going on. Yeah. And from that place, we can start to make decisions about what we want to do with that information. Some of it we know is factual. Some of it we don't know is factually correct. We just have a sense that it could be, and so it's a sense perception. And sometimes we go off down the road of having beliefs about things that we think are true but actually might not be. So I had to get myself to the point where, I mean, I was, you know, a few years ago engaging in Facebook discussions and disagreements and sharing things, and because I just felt that just because I'd started to get more connected into this stuff, and it was making sense to me about how all this stuff has come together and who's in control of this and that and the other. I felt it was my duty to try and share that with them, with people, to try and help other people to start to maybe see a different perspective in it as well. But then you just get sucked into, you know, the people who are not at that, who are not on that same 100%. Journey. They come in, start firing things in because they're looking through the lens of, well, a very different lens, and very much they're still trusting mainstream media sources to get their information. They still read papers. They're heavily consumed within the kind of financial world of you know, economics and what we need to do to stay safe and flourish and all that kind of stuff. And it just clouds people's views about the wider world. It really does. But I had to just pull myself back from that and completely, because I was getting anger was a strong emotion coming through. I was not present around my family because I was going through, what can I do to try and help this situation. I was ruminating. I was just I was doing my own head in with it all. And I'd got myself down a number of rabbit holes where I thought, right. And my partner was fantastic with this, actually, because she sort of said to me, "You're changing. You're not you, and you're this is taking up a lot of your time and energy." And she was spot on. So my withdrawal from that was essential to allow me to move into what I'm doing now. But I used that as a catalyst, because how can I affect the world in some kind of positive way? Well, on a small level, I can start with myself. As Andrew brilliantly put, you've got to start with yourself, because how we think and feel and then how we act is you know, it's got an energy behind it. It's got a vibration behind it. We need to work on that, and then, you know, from that place we can add value to other people. And in the business, the social enterprise that I've set up, if I can share some of this stuff with more people and help people to maybe get to some realizations themselves through that process, become more resilient and stronger, and start to lead more from their hearts rather than their heads, the kind of the ego state. If we start living more in a heart-centered way, then we are going to affect the wider world in a positive way. And that was the way for me to be able to try and make some kind of a ripple or change, you get lost in yourself with all that, starting to try and boil the ocean with it. So I had to go at some kind of a small level, and it was me that had to change, not other people, because you can only control this.
Yeah, so true. There's so many different things that I could pick up on from what you said. It's just absolutely fascinating. I mean, I went through that myself, the whole conspiracy theory thing, 9/11 was an inside job, zeitgeist movement stuff, and it's fascinating, but there comes a time and a point where you're just like, well, it is what it is. Really,
what can I do with that information?
Exactly. Like false flag operations, this and that, Operations Northwood. But yeah, like I don't know what I would call them. They're not really arguments, they're not really debates, but with my dad regularly as to why I don't read the newspapers or consume mainstream media, and ultimately you just start arguing about your perspectives. And there's a meme online where it's one person standing, there's it's either a 9 or a 6 that's drawn on the floor, and someone's standing at one side of it saying it's 6, and there's another person standing on the other side saying it's 9, and neither of them are really wrong. It's just their perspective on it. And I think appreciating that everyone is operating from their own level of consciousness or their own level of awareness, and you're never necessarily going to align with people that have different perspectives, and that's just part of life. The
inbuilt programming that we have and where we lead from will determine what kind of a world we see, and what kind of what kind of beliefs we have, what kind of outcomes and discussions that we want to get. And if we're leading from a place that's just about trying to prove that we're right, which is quite ego driven, and I had to learn that myself. Why are you doing this? What are you going to get from it? If people want to awaken themselves to some of the stuff that's going on and choose to, whether they want to believe at some level it could be true, then that's up to them. It's not your job to help them to do that. And so I think you can get into. To habits there where you see the world through quite a dark lens. You can start to see that there's all this difficulty and all this. And I'm still very passionate about corruption in terms of stuff going on, and the imperialism and what that's done across the world to heighten people's suffering. And the stuff that's going on right now, I think I did post something the other day about stuff going on in Yemen.
I saw that.
Which I have moments where I think get on a plane, go over, and give somebody a hug. Just try and do something to try and help these people. I feel overly connected in that way sometimes, and then I have to kind of rationalise a bit and say, right, what can you do? What are the small things you can do to try and help? Well, if you want to go down trying to influence political people, then you could start small and message your MP and say you want this to be brought up in Parliament. You can, if you see legitimate causes out there who are trying to trying to do helpful things to get aid to people and different stuff, then you might want to do that. But I think ultimately you've got to throw love at it rather than throw more anger onto the fire, because I've learned through my own experience that doesn't really work, and I have to really try and control and regulate that in me, because I've got a real burning desire to want to help and wake people up to their senses, and the people who are perpetuating this. I would love to get in a room with them. I would love it. Anyway,
I think there's I think what we're being shown now in the world with certain politicians is a signal. It's contrast. It's just a signal to illuminate something in us that gives us the contrast to the contrast. I.e., it's a really simplistic way of saying it, but people either come from fear or they come from love, and if you break it down to that and you watch certain people saying certain things, you will know it's either fear or love,
Mm-hmm.
and you can choose which way you want to go.
Yeah.
It really is and can be that simple. And if you see something that is in contrast to your belief, then you have to do the opposite and show more love and more caring and more understanding. And as Gary said, the more of us that do that, the more it will start to change. We can change things hugely if enough of us want to change.
Definitely.
Yeah. Big
You
time.
know, it
Form.
nearly happened in the 60s. It nearly happened that there was a lot of people on that journey, for wanting to talk about old hippies, but they were very close to changing people's perceptions.
Yeah.
And who's to say what would have happened? But we have this ability now to connect with other people, and we have the ability to show love, and we have the ability to show the best sides and parts of ourselves. And the more that we can do that, and the more in touch with ourselves we become, the more we will gather strength, and shift will happen.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try and go off on a tangent and then come back full circle, actually. So I was watching the Joe Rogan Experience with Darren Brown on it. I tend to watch it more than I listen to it, actually. And they got into talking about kind of law of attraction, secret type stuff, and it's not dissimilar to the worldview, you know, how you experience the world. And Darren was saying that it's always healthy to have an element of kind of skepticism or cynicism or kind of healthy negativity in some respects. Like, if you'd asked me what was my worldview, I'd have said, and I still kind of maintain this.
Elliot, what's your worldview?
What's my worldview? It's generally been that, like, life happens for me. So in terms of a spectrum, I'd have said that I was probably deluded optimism, with a hint of realness. You know, so I genuinely would trust in there's some sort of, I don't believe in God, I don't particularly believe in any sort of higher power, but I believe that positive attracts positive, and that being optimistic and trying to come at life from a place of love, that's what you ultimately will attract into it. And I still massively believe that. I fully believe that. I fully believe that, you know, had it not been for me doing different things in my life and taking maybe a different path, I wouldn't be sitting here with you guys. I wouldn't be having this conversation. If I had never got into spirituality or listened to Eckhart Tolle, I wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't be sitting with you guys, you know? And so how did I manifest this situation? You know, on a sort of metaphysical level, though, you know, if we're all energy and we're all vibration, then you do have the ability to shift that to be a negative or a positive. And by trying to condition yourself to be positive, I think that you do attract positive things into your life. And I don't think that's delusional.
No, I don't either.
No, it's just a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
It's just that seeing the positive in any situation.
Trying to. Look,
trying to, of course.
We're all human. It's challenging at times, but yeah.
Well, some of us.
Yeah, of course it is.
Not all of us.
Yeah. We can't have this utopian sort of existence where everything we see is positive. You know, that's just unrealistic. It's about how we deal with all the different things that are going on. But I mean, the whole quantum physics side of things and universal laws and, you know, your law of attraction and you know, karma and all these different things, when you start to get different views on these things, and that's something that I've done, gone to workshops and connected into things online and really started to try and gather information that might be helpful to me, just to understand what's going on a bit better. And I think we've all got that inner desire to know, you know, who are we and what is this all about? You know, I think it's a common question, and I think the biggest step forward for me in this journey was just realizing that you know, we're just, for me, I firmly believe that this is just we're using these bodies as a vehicle to experience what we're experiencing, to make strides at a soul level rather than a material level. You know, this is just the experience we're having, And I think, when we start to disengage from the kind of the stories that we tell ourselves and the identities that we've created for ourselves, and because it can lead to people becoming quite feared of death and things like that as well. I'm completely comfortable with that now, and
Yeah, I'm the same.
almost seeing this as just it's a guarantee, but in terms of what happens after that, I think obviously we don't know specifically what that is, but I've got a real sense of excitement that if I can do good work during this life, that maybe there could be another one at a soul level that's very different and has different things to overcome, but it's all heading in a particular direction, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. But I entertain these things. I do entertain them.
Yeah. Totally. There's a guy on YouTube called Hans Wilhelm, and his stuff's awesome, and he talks about what happens after death. And it's unverifiable, but he's talking like you're talking about, that ultimately you're a soul, so you're just like pure consciousness, and then you're given a body and you're transported to the material world. In this case, we're on Earth, and then you learn stuff throughout your life, and things are put in your way in order for you to ultimately try and evolve to the next stage.
Ascend,
and there's like 7 grades, and you're working your way up, and by the time you get to the top, you're at like the peak level, and that's like I don't really know what's there,
maybe
but
don't come back here for a material experience because you're in nirvana or whatever you want to call it. But who knows?
Andrew, meaning of life?
42. The meaning of life is the meaning you give it. And if you choose to give it your own meaning, then you're in control. James Taylor, the great singer-songwriter, wrote a song called The Meaning of Life. And the meaning of life, he says, is enjoying the passage of time. And that's the most mindful thing that any singer-songwriter has ever written. So it's a great song, folks, if you want to listen to it. James Taylor, The Meaning of Life. Oh, I beg your pardon, The Secret of Life.
Secret of Life.
Not The Meaning of Life. But
sounds very Alan Wattsy, actually.
Well, Alan Watts is a great person to go and listen to. What a beautiful voice, and what amazing messages. The meaning of life is the meaning you give it, and you're allowed to change the meaning you give it in every moment. And life happens to us and through us, and we can change our experience at any point. At any point, we can decide to think a different way. And that's a tough thing to do. It's a very difficult thing to do, because what we experience, or what we think we experience in the real world, feels very real. But it's not. It's not real at all, because what we're experiencing is all in here. We're seeing it and hearing it and feeling it in here, rather than out there. And if we choose to believe that it's all out there, then what's out there will affect what's in here. And the only way that we can truly be in control is realise it's all in here. And that's tough. That really is tough. There's a lot of people have struggled with that over the years, including myself. But every little thought, every little change of thought, or a miracle as they call it in Course in Miracles, any little change of thought starts us changing on a cellular level, and the more that we can do that, the more we can start to evolve and become the people we were destined to be. Whatever that is.
I think just to add to that, I think what we see in the world is really just an expression of human consciousness, isn't it? It's that's what we see, and I think that over time, and all these, I think this mindset of kind of let's look at imperialism, for example, and all this kind of this mentality of, and we're seeing it played out within the political spectrum, just quite significantly in the US and Britain and lots of other places as well. These individuals who have got themselves into these positions of power, who are deeply rooted in this imperialistic kind of thinking, where it's about, some will have a a good life or a comfortable life and the rest will be exploited is very much the ideology, and that's the ideology that exists within some of the political parties as well. That's what they're built on. That's the foundation that they're built on. And if you vote for that political party, that's also your values, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. And sometimes people need to hear that to maybe get a reaction from them, to maybe just, well, that's not what I believe. Well, that's what you're voting for. So I think we have to be very take the gloves off and just be very honest with people. And I'm quite an honest and upfront guy. I don't tend to put a bed of roses around it if that's what it is. And to help us to change that, we need to change how people help them to kind of see a different perspective on life, in terms of we don't just look after those that are closest to us and to hell with everybody else. We kind of do our best to be kind and look after everyone if we can, in different ways. And I think what we're also seeing, I think, as well, is that some of the inbuilt programming that exists within the human brain, that in the conditions and the experiences that we have in childhood, and all these things can shape how we behave and how we think and how we feel, which is effectively that's part of our personality, but we very much, I think, as part of this journey, I think if we get into set ways of seeing ourselves, then it restricts us from changing, because as far as I'm concerned, I want to change my destiny from the one that I came into this life with, because I've come in with all this genetic programming, I've come in with this stuff that I've inherited through the ancestral line, and I don't know exactly what that destiny is, but I'm choosing to create my own destiny through how I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, and what I'm giving out to others that are round about me, and how I'm working on myself. So if I look at my family situation, I can see patterns there of things that I've inherited, and my parents inherited things from their parents, and it just keeps going and going and going. So I've been able to sit back, and mindfulness has been really helpful for me and allowing me to sit back and have a look at some of the patterns of thinking, of feeling, of behaviours, and some of the challenges and lessons that perhaps my family have had that I've also then had, and I can see me and them and them and me, and I've made decisions to say, well, that's not going to be me, that's not going to be my path. And it's helped me massively to get over a period a couple of years ago of where I was on a similar downward spiral to the one that my dad had obviously gone down when he was of a similar age that I was back then, and when I was a child. And he didn't have the tools to cope with some of the difficulty that he was facing, and some of the thinking that was taking him down these spirals of into mental health, serious difficulty. And he wanted out. He'd had enough, and he wanted out. And luckily, he didn't. That didn't occur. But he's had a long and quite challenging road. But he's still going around. He's still dodging along, and
I like folk who can dodge along.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good phrase.
But
it's great.
It's almost like I had this sort of epiphany moment to see that I was getting this mirror image situation occurring to me. This challenge was right in front of me, and I was able to just see it playing out like on a movie screen. And I just had a moment round the dinner table where I'd gone through a period of where I was depressed. I was going through. I was pretty low, and I had to shake myself out of it. And it was that thing that just triggered in me, and I just saw it. What age was my dad again? Similar age. What was right? I know what's coming here. I can see it, and it helped me. It just helped me to say, right, I've got to start to think differently, and when I start to think differently, I'm going to start to feel different, and then from that place, I was able to move myself forward. But it was a gift. It was brought to me as a gift.
Having that level of self-awareness is a gift in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can also be a curse.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, yeah. When you know, you know too much and you see too much. You can. But that's all part of it. It's not a smooth. It's not a smooth journey, is it? It's full of contrast, full of ups and downs, and even these ups and downs can be from day to day.
Yeah.
You can have moments of realization in a day where yesterday you were feeling really not good, and you can have a moment the day after and you're just like, clarity, right, this is it, and you get this momentum forward, a little shift, something positive happens, you just think, right, I need to stop going there, I need to stop going back into that default pattern of thinking and feeling, because this is where it's going to take me. And from that place you can literally change these we can change these connections in our brain, make the new connections, and from that place we can we can really overcome some of the stuff that perhaps is just been, quite often is something we've inherited.
Yeah. Guys, that's about an hour and 20 minutes.
My goodness, you're joking.
No, I'm being deadly serious. So we had talked about potentially doing a meditation at the end. I think we'll probably have to leave that today in the aid of keeping a good time.
Do a 5 second.
But
okay, close your eyes and focus on your breathing.
that's perfect.
That's it.
Awesome.
That's all you need to know, folks.
Yeah, 10
That's
in
it.
breaths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, this has been amazing. So much fun, so much good stuff in here, and I think we should make this a semi-regular thing. So I'd just like to thank you both for being here, coming on, and let's do it again.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Elliot. You've been a great host.
Oh,
Fantastic,
thank you.
mate. Enjoyed it. Yeah, let's get the trilogy done.
100%. I like it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, to anyone that's been watching Facebook, Instagram, if you're still there, and YouTube, like, share, comment, subscribe, anything. Let us know what you thought of this.
Yeah.
And see you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for your time.
Arrivederci.